Let me just take you in for a minute. It's such an honor, really, to be on this platform today. As she introduced me earlier, I did begin right here at Unity of Dallas in 1995 with my Unity journey. And so I always hold a very special place in my heart for Unity of Dallas. And really see you all drawing in the perfect and right leadership for you as you are in this process. And so I hold you in that. I hold you in my heart and hold you in that process. And so today, you might have seen on the sign or somewhere my title for the talk today. It's called The Reason for the Season. And I'm sure many of you have heard that around, maybe on Facebook or somewhere. Jesus is the reason for the season. How many have heard that? Jesus is the reason for the season. I grew up in a very traditional Christian background. I was a Baptist growing up. And so when I hear Jesus is the reason for the season, I just kind of want to go like that, I have my resistance to that because as I've grown a little bit, as I've learned a little bit, I realized that yes, we celebrate Jesus, and for many of us, Jesus is one of the reasons for the season, and there are many other paths, many other ways of us growing spiritually and claiming our truth and learning our truth, and there are many other celebrations going on around this time of year as well. And so I have a little resistance to that, and so I thought, well, what really is the reason for the season? Especially in Unity and New Thought. Yes, we celebrate Jesus, but it's more than that, really. So I wondered about that. And yesterday, Jay and I were in the car with his mom. His mom is 88 years old, and she's a diehard Baptist. And she said, well, what are you talking about tomorrow? And I said, well, my title is The Reason for the Season. And she said, well, what is the reason for the season? And I jokingly said, presents, of course. Of course presents are the reason for the season. And so she laughed and she said, yeah, exactly, presents are the reason for the season. But as I thought about that, as I thought about my statement, presents are the reason for the season, I recognized that in some way that's true. Not P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S, but P-R-E-S-E-N-C-E. Presence is the reason for the season. At least the way I celebrate the season today, and I think the way Unity teaches us to celebrate the season today, is that Jesus, the master teacher, our way shower, as we see Jesus as our brother, elder brother, who came into this world to teach us. He came into this dimension to teach us about the Christ consciousness, the Christ ideal. I love that Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, talks about that God, the mind of God is replete with ideals. And he uses the word ideals sometimes, and he uses the word ideas as well. But I like the concept ideals. And that the Christ is the one idea in the mind of God for all of us. Christ is our potential. And we believe Jesus was here to teach us that. That Jesus came into this world at a particular time to a particular people, a people who were living as slaves, enslaved in a way to the Romans, a people who had been for centuries really under foreign rule, a people who were looking for a Messiah, a people who were looking for hope. A people who were living in when we call darkness metaphysically, is ignorance in a way. It's not knowing. And what they didn't know, that what Jesus came to teach, is that the Christ is in you. And the Christ is in me. And so as I celebrate Christmas and I celebrate the birth of Jesus, I celebrate his teaching, the teachings that have endured. And we don't have all of the teachings, but the teachings that have endured. So Jesus was here I believe, at a particular time and a particular place to teach a particular people, whether they got it or not, you know? And he was here to bring the message of hope as we celebrate with Advent, hope and peace and love and joy. That's really the message for Christmas, isn't it? Isn't that what we'd all really love to have? How many of you would love to have hope and peace and joy and love in your life all the time, right? I think we all want that. And I think that is the possibility for Christmas as we understand Christmas, the embodiment of the Christ within us. And I believe that sometimes as we look at the world around us, we don't see that everywhere. We don't see love and peace and joy, and we don't always see hope manifested out there. Sometimes I look at the world and I see some of the things that are going on in the world today, mass shootings and racial injustice and just injustice in general, and people who are fleeing for their lives, becoming refugees from violence. And I think sometimes if I look at that, I can feel a little hopeless. What do we do about that? How do we bring hope to that? How do we bring healing to that? There's a lot of suffering in the world. Not just out in the world somewhere, but there's suffering happening in our own backyards, right? We don't have to go too far to see need and to see people in lack and suffering. And that's painful. It's painful. But I believe that there is really ultimately only one cause of all suffering. There's only one cause of all suffering. And suffering, what we see in the world out there, I believe, is the result of a spiritual dis-ease. A spiritual dis-ease that begins with the germ of one thought. And that one thought is, I am separate. I'm separate from God. I'm separate from you. And I'm even separate from myself. And we see it playing out in the world on a grand scale. Because this disease, I believe, has reached epidemic proportions. And we see it playing out all over the world. Because when we believe we're separate, when we believe we're separate from God, thus we are separate from each other, that's a kind of a fearful place to be, isn't it? It's scary to think I'm all alone out here in the world, trying to make my way. And what happens with that, I think, is that when we set up that separation and we feel the fear, we either want to run away and do absolutely nothing, or we want to fight against it. And so we see ourselves quite often treating or trying to treat what is actually just the symptom of the disease. You know? We want to legislate peace. We want to kill the people who don't agree with us. If we could just get rid of all of them, we would be happy, right? Unfortunately, that's not true. Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? The truth is, it ain't working for us, is it? I think there's really only one cure for that disease, and that cure is, I think, the fulfillment of the promise of Christmas, the promise of the season. And the promise of the season, I think, is that each and every one of us recognizes the Christ and embodies the Christ as our own. And that through that, as we do that, as we work with that, we experience our own healing. Because as we know, what we see out there is a projection of what's going on in here, right? So rather than trying to treat the symptoms, or trying to say, well, if they would just get in line, or if they would just do, I think it's incumbent upon us to recognize that it begins right here. That the peace begins here. That love begins within us. That joy is our divine nature. That we have the opportunity to recapture, to know ourselves as that. And that through that, as we do that, then we become the hope for the world. That as Jesus was born to a people in darkness, as Jesus was here at a particular time and at a particular place to minister to the people in a world in which he was born, you and I are born into this time and into this place, at this particular place in history, to minister to the people of the world. We're here to bring the light. We're here to be the ones. You know? It wasn't Jesus' job. It's our job. That the Jews were looking for a Messiah. One who would bring God's kingdom to the earth. One who would establish God's kingdom here on the earth and would restore the world to peace and harmony and joy and hope and all of the things we say we want. But that wasn't what Jesus was here to do. He was here to show us the way. He was here to say, you are the light of the world. And he said that, didn't he? You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine before men that your Father in heaven is glorified. What does that mean to us? Claim the truth, be the truth, shine the light of truth into a world that appears to be living in darkness or ignorance of their own truth. Be the presence of the Christ in this time, in this place, so that the truth, the source, the one power and one presence is made manifest. That, I believe, is our hope. Our hope. And the fulfillment of what I believe is the reason for the season. Yes, Jesus' birth is one reason for the season as we celebrate that. But the birth of the Christ in you and me, I believe, is a deeper reason for the season. Because we are the ones. And how do we do that? Sometimes it's very easy to say, oh, we just need to do it. You know? I love it when people say, well, you just need to forgive. Well, that's easier said than done sometimes. You just do it. Okay, just do it. Like Nike, just do it. All right, just do it. But I don't know about you, but if I just went out there and tried to run a marathon, I would probably kill myself. I don't care what shoes I had on. Right? And so if we're just supposed to do it, I think it may take us a little while to build up to doing it, right? And I think it really begins with our willingness to accept our truth. To really own that the Christ consciousness is a possibility. It is our potential. We say it. I behold the Christ in you. I behold the Christ in me. But do we? Do we? Really? I think it's a question that we get to ask ourselves. Do I even believe that? Really believe it? That the Christ is a possibility for me. It's not just something that Jesus did and we have to worship him. Jesus never said, worship me, as far as I know. What did Jesus say? Follow me. Don't look to me as the one who did it. That ain't going to get you nowhere. Do it. Just do it. Follow me in the way of the Christ. And I think, first of all, it's our willingness to even believe it. You know, metaphysically, in the story, the Christmas story, you know, the angel represents that first awareness. Our willingness to even hear the Christ is born. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. For unto you is born today, right now. Our willingness to even hear that. Like the wise men and the shepherds and Joseph in the story heard that. Angel appeared, or the star appeared. So first it's coming to a cognitive awareness of it. And then I think it's important for us not only to think it, not only to know it, but to really take it in. Again, as Mary represents in the story, the openness, receptivity, the willingness to say, be it done unto me. Be it done unto me. I'm willing. I'm willing to know the Christ. I'm willing to open up and be the vessel through which that Christ consciousness is born into the world. So I think it takes not only a mental understanding, but a deep willingness. Mary represents, as metaphysically in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it's the soul. My soul does magnify the Lord. I am here as God's handmaiden, if you will. And then, not only must we understand it mentally and must open ourselves up to the realization of it in our hearts, but then we have to do something with it. Its mind, its heart, its spirit, and its body. It's knowing it's realizing it, and then it's our willingness to step out and do something with it. I really enjoy Myrtle Fillmore's letters when there's one that's in her book, Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters, that talks about threefold healing. Somebody wrote to her and said, will you just pray for my healing? I trust that if you pray for me, I will be healed. And she wrote back and she said, dear one, that's not how it works. Prayer is great. Prayer is wonderful. That's a beginning. Prayer, we can pray with you and we can hold the best and highest for you, and we can encourage you to hold the thoughts that are in alignment with your truth. But then you have to do something with it. If you want healing of the body, pray. Hold positive thoughts. But if you're eating at McDonald's every day, you're probably not going to experience healing. Hope nobody owns McDonald's here. That just kind of came out. It could be any junk. It could be any. I better just start over. Can I just take that back? Anyway, if you're not eating healthfully, then your body may not respond. So it's not only the mind and the spirit, but it's actually doing something. So as we look at the cure for this disease that begins with a thought of separation, I think it really begins with us knowing that the Christ is our potential, opening up to that realization of the Christ. As Charles Fillmore also said, realization precedes manifestation. So we realize that truth, and then we listen for what is ours to do with that. And so as we do that, as we move through this season, it's a great opportunity for us to maybe look at what's getting in the way. Are we willing to open? Are we willing to know that? Are we willing to open ourselves up to that? And are we truly willing to be the Christ in the world? To step forward and to take action, to bring peace. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be when you go to a family gathering and you have some conflict with a relative or a mother-in-law, or whatever, to bring peace. To bring peace in that moment. To be the essence of love in that moment. Compassion and understanding and connection. Because as long as we see each other, we see ourselves as separate from God, we see each other separate, we see ourselves separate from each other, then we're not going to experience that true oneness, the true essence of the Christ. If I can't truly see myself as the Christ, I can't truly see you as the Christ. And if I can't truly see you as the Christ, then I really can't see myself as the Christ. If we're holding anyone outside of the potential and possibility of being the Christ, then we're not in Christ consciousness. Make sense? Christ consciousness is the consciousness of oneness. God consciousness, if you will. The consciousness that Jesus taught from. So I believe that's what he was teaching us. We can do it. We can do it. And we then become the reason for the season. We become the hope for humanity. We become the bringers of peace. We become the ones who are here to bring love and light to the world. And we become the ones who celebrate the joy of life itself. We become the ones to manifest the kingdom of God on the earth. That, I believe, is the fulfillment of the promise of Christmas. And that is the reason for the season. So I encourage you, as you leave here today, as you move about your week, as you go about your daily activities, daily, as Charles Fillmore said, daily affirm, as often as you possibly can, I am the Christ. I am the Christ. And notice all the yeah buts that come up. And continue to affirm, continue to open, continue to allow. And just notice how things change. Make it an intentional, conscious effort. And so in that way, we are the fulfillment of the promise of Christmas. Thank you for today. Thank you. So before I sing, I just want to take a moment and just ask you to breathe into that for a moment. Just allow yourself to take that in. Just to notice. And I'm going to ask you to affirm with me. Just affirm with me right now together. I am the Christ. Together, let's say that. I am the Christ. Say it again. I am the Christ. Again. I am the Christ. Take that into your heart. Breathe it in. Allow the truth of that to be revealed in your heart. Open up, like Mary, to be the vessel through which the Christ consciousness is born, here and now, this moment. I am the Christ. And just notice if there are thoughts that arise that might contradict that, and just see if you can surrender them and just go back to the affirmation, I am the Christ. I I am the fulfillment of the promise of Christmas. I am that I am. I am the true light coming into the world. I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. I am that I am. And feel that resonating in every cell of your body. Feel every cell of your body awakening to the truth, vibrating with the truth, resonating in that frequency of Christ. Embodiment of the Christ, here and now present, I am that. I am the fulfillment of the promise of Christmas, the birth of the Christ, here and now. And ground that all the way through the bottom of your feet, grounding it into Mother Earth, feeling the energy rising, just feeling your entire being glowing with that energy of Christ, the light of the Christ. I am that. I am that. Now take a deep breath and breathe all of that back into your heart space, claiming it, owning it, knowing it. I behold myself as Christ, and in that awareness, I behold all beings as Christ. I am, you are, I am. Now take a deep breath, feel the chair supporting you, feel yourself grounded, feel the floor beneath you. Breathe deeply. As you breathe your awareness back into this space, feeling the energy of the people sitting behind you, on each side of you, in front of you. Really just surrendering into oneness. Breathe deeply. Open your eyes, coming back into this space. We are grateful.
One heart, one love, one light, one child, one song, one star, one night. Heaven saw the world in darkness, a world of fear, a world of light. Heaven gave a gift, the truth of who we are, in a baby